Hi, my name is Ryan Owens. I'm a junior at the University of Washington studying chemistry. I'm part of the FOO group, and today I'm going to tell you how to make a 3D printed spectrophotometer at home using a 3D printer and other materials. So a little overview of how it's going to work. There's going to be steps showing you how to go from a file to printing, all the parts you need, and the assembly steps in order, and I'll have supplemental videos showing that. So the first part of 3D printing is using a model, right? So right here we have Fusion. So you can either use the model we'll provide with you, or you can make your own. So this is what it will look like in the software. And so we want to make this into another file that we can then use to change our print settings and eventually make it into a file that we can use to print. So there's our STL file. We want to put it in a preview so we can see what the physical model looks like. And then here in this actual program, we can change the infill, we can change different print settings so that when we go to print, our settings are optimized so that way we get the best print possible when we have it actually on our machine. And so as you can see by the different colors correspond to different parts of the build, showing things like scaffolding, infill, and other things that you need to determine if your build will be successful, as well as print properly. So once we have all the settings we need, the next part of it is actually transforming the file we now have into something the printer can use and read. So this is called a G-code file, and for our printer specifically, this allows it to know the path that the head has to take in order to print the model we want. So then after that, we send it to the printer and let it do its thing. Now that you know what you need to do to print, here are all the things you need to actually build the spectrophotometer. So first you need the lower body, the upper body. You need to have the lens shroud, the slit, the grating, a power source, an LED, and a lens. And to sort of build all of this together, you'll also need some hot glue, which is a lab favorite, and you'll also need all the other materials on the screen. So now that you have all these materials laid out in front of you, you'll have to actually assemble the pieces together. So the first way you want to do this is by assembling the two lower pieces as following. And then the next step is actually putting in the slit and the already sort of carved out slot for it, followed by the grating right behind it. So that way when the light goes through the slit, it passes through the sample and then the grating. So now you want to put the lens in the lens shroud, and then you'll eventually put this in its little holder and then in the little slot behind the grating. So that way when the light focuses on the lens, it can then focus to a point on the actual sensor that we have. Right? And so now as you can see, it's finally attached behind the grating, and now we can begin to assemble the other parts. We can put the two batteries into our power supply, and then from here we want to attach this power supply to our actual LED. And as you can see, this results in our light shining. Usually this LED is through this hole as you see on the screen, but I've just rested on top for simplicity's sake. Now that we have our light shining and all of our pieces in our actual body, we can now install our webcam that acts as a sensor, picking up the light that is not absorbed by the sample, which we then use to create our absorbance curve. Now that we have our webcam installed, I want to show you how to optimize the lens to get all of the information you need through light. So you must ensure that all the light is hitting the sensor on your webcam. For us, light is information, and the more you lose, the less information you have. Without the necessary light, we can't have our necessary absorbance curve. And so you can change this sort of focus point size by moving the lens back and forth. So you can see with the arrow over here, here's our lens. So you move it back and forth until all the light is fixed onto the point that you can see circled on the actual sensor of the webcam. Now that you have this lens distance optimized, you now have a complete spectrophotometer. You can put the upper assembly together, put it on, and then you're all done. Now you have a working, functioning, 3D printed spectrophotometer.